US sanctioned our death squad RAF for extrajudicial killing. Why RAF was involved in this type of activities? To save this government, to keep in power in this government. So, through this government, there is not possible a strong initiatives because this government are in power by some, you can say, syndicates.
Urge upon all to give a very comprehensive thought to solving this problem and insist that the world community be involved in it. Involving the world community in this effort may not suit some of the friends of Bangladesh. Kindly see who have donated to this crisis and you will discover who are friends and who are not friends.
The incumbent regime, without people's mandate, focusing more on protecting its illegitimate power, itself marred with awful record of human rights violation, is not getting legitimacy to deal with the Rohingya human rights issue in the international forum.
1978 and 92, at the time it was done peacefully because at that time a strong government was there. But now why it is not possible? First, because there is also an issue in this paper. This is a authoritarian government, an elected government, who are involved in gross human rights violation. Even US sanctioned our death squad RAF for extrajudicial killing. Why RAF was involved in this type of activities? To save this government, to keep in power in this government. So, through this government, there is not possible a strong initiatives because this government are in power by some, you can say, syndicates, different kinds of syndicates, business syndicates, government official syndicates, judiciary syndicates, different types of syndicates. So they are not able to take a strong position, which was taken at the time of 1978 and 1992. So that's why, first I think, if we want to solve this problem, we need a fresh democratic government. Without a democratic government, it's not possible. We can pay loads of things, we can present loads of paper. Because one of the panel speaker, Mr. Jahid, said, this is also a geopolitical strategy and geopolitics. Here is our closest neighboring country. I do not want to mention the name, but I have to say our closest neighboring country. They are not saying anything about these issues, even when a resolution is in the UN, but they are not taking position with us. Even ASEAN is not also taking a strong position. Even some ASEAN countries, there is huge investment in Myanmar, like Singapore, even in our neighboring country, India, China. So first, if we want to solve this problem, I think election is coming ahead. All the opposition parties are struggling for 14 years for a fair election, fresh election. So here is our diplomatic friends. So I request you to take position on the line of Bangladeshi people, democratic movement. If we can achieve a free, fair election, if we own our democratic movement, then we will be possible to find a friendly solution, a good solution. Thanks all.
The increasingly important role of Rohingya diaspora in finding a solution to their long-standing humanitarian and political crisis, establish stronger ties with internationally recognized Rohingya diaspora leaders, granting them more space and collaborating closely with them in international fora. Address the issue of employment opportunities for Rohingya adults. Recognize that relying solely on continuous global donation to support Rohingya refugees is unsustainable. Assess employment opportunities in the Greater Chittagong region, and if labor shortages, are identified in major sectors such as farming and manufacturing, allow Rohingyas to work in these productive sectors. Now we say this with a caveat, because it must happen we have to be sure that such an employment does not crowd out local employment. So this is a very sensitive issue for locals, as you understand. So any such programs must bear in mind so it doesn't crowd out the local employment, and it does not drive down the prevailing wages also, because this is a concern for locals living around Rohingya camps. Establish an information monitoring system in collaboration with UNHCR to track the Rohingya refugees, their employment locations, and other whereabouts. I'll skip some more here. Review Bhashanchor camp. So this is something needs to be reviewed actually. Ensure that the views and aspirations of Rohingya refugees themselves are taken into account when devising repatriation plans. Engage more closely with the Rohingya community to understand their desires and comply fully with UN treaties and protocols on the repatriation of refugees. Facilitate track 2 meetings. Facilitate track 2 meetings between Rohingya and other Rakhine communities, aiming at fostering dialogue and reconciliation. Achieving cohesion and peaceful existence between Rohingya and Rakhine communities is crucial for finding a sustainable solution to the Rohingya crisis. Rohingya refugee problem with 1.2 million now sheltered in Bangladesh, with an annual increase of 30,000 due to new childbirth, is a mounting problem on our economy and almost a threat to our national security. We must resolve the crisis the soonest possible by ensuring the Rohingyas' safe, voluntary, dignified, sustainable repatriation back to their motherland with their Myanmar citizenship. To achieve this, we must take all our international friends, including our neighbors, on board, create an effective environment and pressure on Myanmar. The incumbent regime, without people's mandate, focusing more on protecting its illegitimate power, itself marred with awful record of human rights violation, is not getting legitimacy to deal with the Rohingya human rights issue in the international forum. For its own survival, the fascist regime is compromising with the greater national interest of Bangladesh. Therefore, a legitimate government with people's mandate, accountable to the people, is a must to engage all the international stakeholders for ensuring a permanent solution of the crisis. Thank you.
We are trying to solve dengue problem in Bangladesh. We are equipping our hospitals. In addition, we are also trying to subdue the mosquito community. Similarly, if we cannot find out the root causes of the crisis, we may not succeed in our attempts to solve it. The crisis lies in geopolitical reasons, attempts by some of our friends, or so-called friends in diplomatic language, to use the territory of Arakan to their advantage, depriving Bangladesh and endangering the security of Bangladesh. I therefore insist, I therefore urge upon all to give a very comprehensive thought to solving this problem and insist that the world community be involved in it. Involving the world community in this effort may not suit some of the friends of Bangladesh. Kindly see who have donated to this crisis, and you will discover who are friends and who are not friends. I would like to beg leave of you, thanking you that I was given the time. Allah Hafiz, Assalamu Alaikum.
I'd like to go to that point where I started this. When the government is not elected, from 2014, since 2014 we are not having an elected government in this country, so it's trying to restore its power at any cost by giving some benefit to other countries which are against our interest. We know everything. It's not the stupidity or mismanagement of the government, I believe. The government did it in a very informed way. They had in my consideration, they had a deal to restore their power, to win the power, and they tried to take the deal from other countries. The government says that they are great powers are their friends, China, Russia, and India. And most of us know in the last proposal that came to the United Nations only to criticize Myanmar's activities, not imposing some sanctions. This type of proposal was not passed due to the veto of China and Russia repeatedly. In June 2023, they last vetoed that proposal. At the same time, in most of the cases, India abstains from the voting. That means they are also not in favor of us. So the government is claiming these three countries are very great friends of the government, but we are not finding any of them are in favor of our country, I better say. They may be in favor of the government to keep the government in the power, but they are not serving the purpose of the people of this country. I want to make it a bit long because the time is a bit constrained, it's already mentioned. I'll read out some last two sentences. Here lies the main factor, I believe. For its own survival, the fascist regime is compromising with the greater national interest of Bangladesh. Therefore, a legitimate government with people's mandate accountable to the people is must to engage all the international stakeholders for ensuring a permanent solution of the crisis. I strongly believe in that. The problem, in fact, we are nowadays facing in our country, in all the cases, when we are trying, the government is trying to have some bilateral discussion with any of the governments of the country, of the world, they always try to focus on their own survival. I can give lots of examples by which I can prove those were not in favor of our country's interest, not in favor of the interest of this country's people, but they did it because they want to extend their power more and more. So that is the deal, and here lies the main problem. So unless we have an elected participatory election and an elected government, these problems won't be solved. Finally, I won't say that having a good elected government will be able to solve all the problems, because I've already mentioned that Rohingya crisis is not a mere bilateral problem, it's a geostrategic issue nowadays. But still, an elected government will have much more power to deal everything in favor of the people of this country. And I'd like to thank you all for an active listening. Thank you very much.
Bangladesh decides to get away from this so-called crazy policy, friendship to all and malice to none, which is unrealistic. It sounds good, but this is a utopian policy. We have to decide on our alliance. Look at the entire Pacific Rim. All these countries are American allies, and they need the United States to prevent, right from South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, and Taiwan. All of them require the American military, naval support in order to contain Chinese expansion. Now, the same manner we see the crescent in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, where the Americans, have deep naval alliances. A future government in Bangladesh must develop a naval alliance with the United States in order to protect our maritime zone. Because the world is a dirty place. You can't simply exist by extending hands of friendship. Below the surface, it's all a tug of war for territorial gains and greater supremacy. As a student of international security and having been trained in American universities and having spent time in the US Naval Postgraduate School at the Department of National Security, I am convinced that Bangladesh in future would require a very strong alliance with the United States, Britain, and decide on the fate of the Myanmar people, and at the same time ensure a safe return of the Rohingyas to their homeland, and also perceive that this entire Arakan coastline will have some influence, some presence of the Bangladesh military in order to ensure the security of that region.